Tonight, we travel back to a world no human being has ever seen. A world before empires, before cities, before the first fire ever burned beneath the night sky. A world untouched by human hands, untouched by sorrow, untouched even by the sound of a human voice. And somewhere within that endless silence, the earth waited quietly for the first man to awaken. Adam. So before we step into that ancient world together tonight, take a moment to settle in comfortably. Maybe dim the lights around you. Maybe pull your blanket a little closer. And if these slow journeys through biblical history bring you peace, you can gently subscribe to the channel and leave a like to help more of these stories continue. Now, let your breathing slow, and together, we will walk quietly into the beginning of everything. Long before humanity existed, the earth already breathed in silence beneath the heavens. Massive mountains stood beneath pale silver skies. Ancient rivers carved their way through untouched valleys where no footsteps had ever passed. Cold morning mist drifted slowly above endless forests. While the wind moved softly through trees no human hand had ever touched. The world felt impossibly young then, wild, sacred, almost dreamlike. There were no roads crossing the hills, no distant cities glowing in the darkness, no kings, no wars, no voices calling through the night, only creation itself, resting peacefully beneath the stars. Birds drifted silently across pale morning skies. Water rolled gently over smooth stone. Soft rain wandered across sleeping fields, untouched by fear or suffering. And everywhere, life moved quietly. The earth knew nothing yet of greed, or violence, or death. The rivers simply flowed, the forests simply breathed, and the stars watched silently from above as the world slept peacefully beneath them, like a beautiful secret, waiting patiently in the dark. And somewhere beyond those endless forests and rivers, there was a garden, a place unlike any other upon the earth, a place filled with warmth, light, and quiet beauty. The ancient world would one day remember it as Eden. The rivers there flowed like glass beneath golden sunlight. Massive trees stretched endlessly toward the heavens, their branches heavy with glowing fruit. Waterfalls disappeared into peaceful pools surrounded by moss-covered stone and deep green earth. Flowers opened slowly beneath the warmth of the morning sun, and even the air itself felt softer there, warm, gentle, alive, as though the entire world breathed slowly within that sacred place. No suffering had ever touched Eden. No sorrow had ever entered its rivers or forests. The animals moved peacefully through open fields and beneath ancient trees. Birds rested quietly beside flowing water. The wind carried only the scent of rain, flowers, and untouched earth across the land. Everything existed in harmony, perfectly still beneath the heavens. If you had walked beside the rivers of Eden then, you would have heard only water moving softly over stone. If you had rested beneath the ancient trees, you would have watched golden light pass slowly through endless leaves above your head. And at night, the sky would have opened like an ocean filled with stars. No smoke rising in the distance, no cities glowing beneath the horizon, only darkness and heaven stretching endlessly above the sleeping earth. The first mornings there must have felt impossibly peaceful. Cold silver mist resting gently above the rivers, golden sunlight slowly touching the tops of ancient trees, birds drifting across pale skies as the world awakened softly each morning. without pain, without fear, without death. Even the wind itself seemed softer there, as though creation still rested peacefully in the hands of God. And yet, despite all its beauty, the garden was still empty. No human voice had ever spoken there. No hands had touched the rivers. No eyes had yet looked upward and wondered about the stars. The earth was waiting quietly for someone to arrive, patiently, silently, like the deep breath before a story finally begins. And somewhere beyond human understanding, something extraordinary was about to happen. Because soon, the dust of the earth would rise. Soon, eyes would open for the very first time. Soon, a man called Adam would walk beneath the trees of Eden. But for now, everything remained still. The rivers flowed quietly beneath the morning light. The stars drifted slowly above the sleeping world. And the earth waited peacefully in silence. So tonight, as the world around you slowly grows quiet, allow yourself to drift gently into that ancient place, into the rivers, into the forests, into the silence before humanity began. And together, we will wait beside Eden for the first man to awaken. For a long time, the garden remained silent. The rivers continued their endless journey through Eden. Morning mist drifted softly between ancient trees. Waterfalls sang quietly beneath golden sunlight. And above it all, the heavens watched in silence. Then one day, something changed. Not with thunder, not with fire, but softly, quietly, like the first breath before awakening. Somewhere within the sacred stillness of Eden, the dust of the earth began to rise. Tiny particles of soil lifted gently into the warm air. The ground itself seemed to breathe for the very first time. And from the earth, a man was formed, Adam. The ancient stories say he was shaped from the dust of the ground itself, from soil, stone, water, and breath. Not born like the generations that would come after him, but created quietly beneath the trees of Eden while rivers moved softly nearby. And then, life entered him. The first human breath. Slow, deep, sacred. The silence of the world was broken for the very first time. Imagine that moment. The first opening of human eyes beneath the morning light. The first movement of human hands against the earth. The first breath of cool air filling human lungs. Adam awakened in a world already overflowing with beauty. Golden sunlight filtered softly through endless branches above him. Warm wind moved through the garden, carrying the scent of rain and flowers. Birds drifted across pale skies overhead. The rivers of Eden rolled gently over smooth stone nearby. Everything around him felt alive, peaceful, sacred. And for the first time in the history of the world, someone was there to witness it. Someone to stand beneath the trees. Someone to touch the rivers. Someone to look upward at the stars in wonder. Adam must have walked slowly at first, quietly, as though the beauty surrounding him was almost too vast to understand. The garden stretched endlessly around him, towering trees heavy with fruit, fields glowing beneath warm sunlight, waterfalls disappearing into crystal pools surrounded by moss-covered stone. Every direction carried something beautiful, something untouched, something pure. Perhaps he rested beside the rivers for long hours, simply listening to the sound of water moving through Eden. Perhaps he wandered beneath the ancient trees while birds rested quietly in their branches above him. Perhaps the silence itself felt comforting, like the entire world breathing peacefully around him. The earth must have felt impossibly alive then. Every leaf moving gently in the wind, every river shining beneath sunlight, every living creature existing peacefully beside another. There was no fear yet inside the world, no violence, no death, only harmony. The animals moved freely through Eden beside Adam. Great creatures wandered peacefully through open fields. Birds rested near flowing water. Small animals drifted quietly through tall grass warmed by the morning sun. And Adam walked among them all, the first human being beneath the heavens. At night, the garden changed. Silver moonlight rested softly across the rivers and trees. The stars filled the sky like endless oceans of light stretching above the earth. And somewhere beneath that ancient night sky, Adam slept peacefully within Eden, the first dreams of humanity beginning quietly beneath the stars. The days passed slowly there, without suffering, without hunger, without fear. The garden provided everything: fresh water flowing endlessly through the land, fruit hanging heavily from ancient branches, warm sunlight across open fields, cool wind drifting through forests each evening. Eden must have felt eternal, as though nothing inside it could ever fade or die. And yet, even within all that beauty, something still remained unfinished. Because although Adam walked beside the rivers, although he stood beneath the stars, although he wandered through the endless beauty of Eden, he was still alone. The forests were alive. The rivers were alive. The skies above him were alive with birds and light. But no other human voice answered his own. No other human eyes looked back at him beneath the trees. And somewhere deep within the silence of Eden, something inside the first man began to long for companionship. But that story would come later. For now, Adam continued walking quietly through the garden, the first human being ever created, the first witness to the beauty of the world. And beneath the endless branches of Eden, the story of humanity had finally begun. As the days passed within Eden, Adam continued wandering through the endless beauty of the garden. He walked beside rivers that shimmered beneath the morning light. He rested beneath ancient trees while soft wind moved through the branches above him. And each night, he looked upward at the endless ocean of stars stretching across the heavens. The world around him was full of life. Birds drifted through pale skies. Animals moved peacefully through open fields warmed by the sun. The rivers never stopped singing softly across smooth stone. And yet, something inside the first man still felt unfinished. Perhaps it began quietly, a feeling too small to describe with words, a silence deeper than the silence of Eden itself. Because although Adam stood surrounded by beauty, he alone carried the thoughts of a human heart. No voice answered his own. No hands reached back toward him. No other eyes looked upon the world the way he did. And somewhere deep within the first man, loneliness quietly entered the earth for the very first time. The ancient stories say that God saw this silence within Adam, saw that even paradise itself was not meant to be experienced alone. And so, something extraordinary was about to happen once again. One evening, as warm golden light faded slowly across the rivers of Eden, Adam rested beneath the ancient trees. Soft wind moved through the garden. Birds settled quietly into the branches above him, and the world itself seemed to grow still. Then slowly, the first man closed his eyes, and sleep came gently over him, deep, peaceful, sacred. The rivers continued flowing beside him. Moonlight rested softly across the garden floor. The stars drifted silently overhead, while Eden slept beneath the heavens. And there, within the quiet stillness of creation, God formed another human life. From Adam came Eve, not shaped from distant earth this time, but created beside him, close to his heart, close to his life, as though humanity itself had now become complete. Imagine the silence of that moment. The warm night air moving gently through the trees. Silver moonlight resting across the rivers of Eden. And beneath the stars, the first woman opening her eyes for the very first time. Eve awakened in a world overflowing with beauty. The scent of rain and flowers drifted softly through the garden. Waterfalls rolled quietly through distant valleys. Ancient trees stretched endlessly toward the heavens above her. Everything around her felt alive, warm, peaceful, sacred, and somewhere nearby, Adam still slept peacefully beneath the trees, unaware that the loneliness carried quietly inside him was about to disappear forever. When morning finally arrived, golden sunlight slowly touched the rivers and forests of Eden. Birds drifted through pale skies overhead. Mist rose gently above the water, and Adam opened his eyes. Then, for the very first time, he saw someone like himself, another human being standing beneath the trees of Eden, alive, breathing, looking back at him with human eyes. Perhaps no moment in human history has ever been so pure. No fear, no suffering, no shame, only wonder. The quiet joy of two human souls meeting for the very first time beneath the morning light. The ancient world was no longer silent. Now there were two voices beside the rivers, two figures walking beneath the trees, two human hearts witnessing the beauty of creation together. And Eden itself must have felt even more alive because of it. Adam and Eve walked together through the garden. They rested beside waterfalls glowing beneath the afternoon sun. They wandered through endless forests while warm wind carried the scent of flowers through the air. At night, they looked upward together at the stars drifting endlessly above the earth. And perhaps for the first time, humanity truly began to feel complete. The days passed gently there, without fear, without pain, without death. The garden continued breathing peacefully around them while rivers rolled endlessly through Eden. Everything existed in harmony, perfectly still beneath the heavens. But somewhere deep within the beauty of the garden, a quiet shadow was already beginning to grow. Small at first, almost invisible, waiting patiently beneath the branches of Eden. And soon, the peace of paradise would begin to change forever. For a time, life within Eden continued peacefully. Adam and Eve walked together beneath ancient trees warmed by golden sunlight. They rested beside rivers that shimmered like glass beneath the heavens. At night, they watched the stars drift slowly across endless skies, while soft wind moved gently through the garden around them. Everything in Eden felt alive. The forests breathed quietly beneath the morning mist. Birds rested in branches heavy with fruit. Waterfalls rolled endlessly through hidden valleys untouched by sorrow or fear. And the first man and woman lived peacefully within it all. But deep within the heart of the garden, there was one tree unlike the others, ancient, silent, mysterious beneath its endless branches. The rivers still flowed beside it. Warm light still touched its leaves each morning. And yet, something about that tree felt different, as though the garden itself grew quieter around it. The ancient stories say that Adam and Eve had been given every beauty within Eden, every river, every field, every tree heavy with fruit beneath the heavens. But this tree alone was forbidden. Perhaps at first, they passed beside it without much thought. The garden itself was endless, overflowing with beauty in every direction. towering waterfalls, fields glowing beneath warm sunlight, ancient forests stretching endlessly toward distant hills. There was so much life within Eden that perhaps the forbidden tree seemed small against the beauty surrounding it. But over time, curiosity began to grow quietly within the silence of the garden. Because human hearts have always been drawn toward mystery, toward the hidden, toward the one door that remains closed. And somewhere beneath the branches of Eden, another presence waited patiently, watching, silent, almost invisible within the beauty of the garden. One day, as warm sunlight drifted softly through the trees, Eve wandered near the forbidden place. The rivers rolled quietly nearby, birds crossed the pale sky overhead, and the garden itself seemed peaceful as always. But hidden among the ancient branches, something waited for her. The serpent appeared quietly, not with violence, not with rage, but softly, almost gently, like a whisper drifting through the trees. And there beneath the branches, heavy with glowing fruit, the silence of Eden began to change. The serpent spoke carefully, patiently, planting quiet thoughts inside the human heart for the very first time. Thoughts of doubt, thoughts of curiosity, thoughts that had never existed within paradise before that moment. Perhaps the garden itself felt different then, the wind quieter, the rivers more distant, as though creation itself held its breath beneath the trees. Eve looked upward at the fruit hanging softly in the golden light. Beautiful, mysterious, forbidden, and somewhere deep within her heart, the quiet simplicity of Eden began to tremble. For the first time, humanity stood between trust and temptation, between peace and the unknown. Nearby, Adam remained unaware that the stillness of paradise was beginning to fracture. The rivers still flowed peacefully through Eden. Sunlight still rested warmly across the garden floor. Birds still drifted across the heavens above them. And yet, something unseen had already entered the world. The shadow was small at first, almost impossible to notice. A single moment, a single choice quietly waiting beneath the branches of the forbidden tree. But soon, that choice would change the earth forever, and somewhere beyond the rivers and forests of Eden, the heavens watched silently as humanity approached its first great sorrow. The garden still looked beautiful. Golden sunlight continued drifting softly across the rivers of Eden. Birds still crossed peacefully through the pale skies overhead. The waterfalls still rolled endlessly through hidden valleys beneath ancient trees. And yet, something inside paradise had already changed. Quietly, almost invisibly, like the first cold wind before a storm finally arrives. Beneath the forbidden tree, Eve stood in silence. The fruit hung above her in the warm golden light. Beautiful, still, waiting, and somewhere within her heart, curiosity slowly overcame peace. The serpent's words lingered quietly inside her thoughts, soft, persistent, like whispers moving gently through the garden. And for the first time, humanity began to drift away from the quiet trust that had once filled Eden. Then slowly, Eve reached upward beneath the ancient branches. Her fingers touched the forbidden fruit. The rivers continued flowing beside her. The wind still moved softly through the trees. The world itself remained silent, as though creation held its breath. And then, she ate. Perhaps the earth itself felt different in that moment. Perhaps the silence of Eden changed forever, because with one single choice, sorrow entered the human story for the very first time. Soon after, Adam stood beside her beneath the trees, And there within the fading, golden light of the garden, he also ate from the forbidden fruit. The first man, the first woman, together beneath the silence of Eden. And suddenly, the world no longer felt the same. The ancient stories say their eyes were opened, but perhaps what truly entered them was not knowledge alone, but fear. For the very first time, human hearts felt shame, uncertainty, vulnerability, emotions the garden had never known before. The peaceful stillness of Eden began to fracture quietly around them. The wind no longer felt entirely warm. The silence no longer felt entirely safe. Even the rivers themselves seemed distant now, as though paradise had begun slowly slipping away from human hands. Adam and Eve looked upon themselves differently now. The innocence that once rested peacefully within them had vanished like morning mist beneath the rising sun. And so, beneath the ancient trees, they hid. Imagine the sorrow of that moment, the first human fear, the first attempt to hide, not from wild animals, not from storms, but from God himself. The garden that once felt endless and safe now carried silence of another kind. A heavier silence, a grieving silence. The evening light faded softly across the rivers and forests of Eden. Long shadows stretched beneath ancient branches. The stars slowly began appearing above the garden once more, but paradise no longer felt untouched beneath them. The ancient stories say that God called out to Adam within the garden, and somewhere among the trees, the first man answered with fear inside his voice. Fear that had never existed in the world before that day. And perhaps that was the true tragedy of Eden. Not simply the fruit, not simply the broken command, but the loss of peace between humanity and the world that once held them so gently. The garden had once felt like home. Now it felt fragile, distant, as though something sacred had begun quietly fading away. Soon, Adam and Eve would leave the paradise that had sheltered them since the beginning. The rivers of Eden would continue flowing without them. The trees would still reach endlessly toward the heavens. The waterfalls would still sing softly beneath the sunlight. But the world beyond the garden would be different, harder, colder, filled with suffering humanity had never known before. And somewhere beneath the darkening skies of Eden, the first man and woman stood together in sorrow, watching paradise slowly slip away forever. By morning, everything had changed. The rivers of Eden still flowed beneath the sunlight. The ancient trees still reached endlessly toward the heavens. Birds still drifted peacefully across pale skies above the garden. And yet, the world no longer felt the same. The peace that once surrounded Adam and Eve had become distant, fragile, like warmth slowly disappearing from the earth. For the first time, humanity understood sorrow. The ancient stories say that Adam and Eve were sent out from Eden, away from the rivers that had once comforted them, away from the forests that had sheltered them beneath endless branches, away from the paradise that had known no suffering. Imagine that final walk through the garden, the soft wind moving through familiar trees, golden sunlight touching the rivers one last time, the waterfalls still singing quietly through distant valleys as though nothing had changed. And perhaps that was part of the sorrow. Eden remained beautiful, but humanity could no longer remain within it. Adam and Eve walked slowly beyond the borders of paradise. The world outside the garden stretched endlessly before them. Wild mountains beneath cold skies, rocky earth untouched by the gentle peace of Eden, harsh wind moving across empty valleys. For the first time, the earth no longer felt entirely safe. behind them. The garden slowly disappeared into the distance. The rivers, the trees, the warmth, the place where humanity itself had begun, all fading quietly beyond the horizon. Perhaps they looked back many times. Perhaps part of them never truly left Eden at all. Because, once you have known paradise, the memory of it never fully disappears. Night arrived differently outside the garden. The wind felt colder there, the silence heavier, the darkness deeper beneath the stars. Adam and Eve rested beside small fires beneath open skies, while the wilderness stretched endlessly around them. And somewhere within that darkness, humanity began learning how fragile life could truly be. The earth outside Eden demanded labor. The soil no longer offered its beauty freely. The land had to be worked with weary hands beneath burning sunlight and cold rain. And Adam, the first man, learned what exhaustion felt like for the very first time. The days became harder, the nights longer. The world no longer moved in perfect harmony around humanity. Storms arrived, cold entered the earth, pain entered the human story, and still, life continued. Adam built shelter beneath rough hills and wandering trees. Eve gathered food beside rivers far different from the peaceful waters of Eden. Together, they learned how to survive within a world that no longer felt untouched. And yet, even outside paradise, beauty still remained. The stars still filled the heavens each night. Rivers still shimmered beneath moonlight. Morning sunlight still touched the mountains in gold each dawn. Creation itself had not disappeared. Only innocence had. Perhaps there were nights when Adam and Eve spoke quietly about Eden beside the fire, about the rivers, about the warmth of the garden wind, about the peaceful silence beneath the ancient trees. Perhaps they remembered paradise the way distant travelers remember home, softly, painfully, beautifully, and somewhere deep within the human heart, hope remained alive. Because even though paradise had been lost, life itself continued moving forward. The rivers still flowed, the stars still watched silently overhead, and humanity, though wounded now by sorrow, continued walking beneath the heavens. The first man and woman had left Eden behind, but the story of humanity had only just begun. Time moved slowly beyond Eden. The seasons changed across the earth. Cold mornings gave way to warm afternoons beneath endless skies. Rain drifted across valleys and forests, while rivers continued carving their way through the ancient world, and humanity continued forward. Adam and Eve slowly built a new life beneath the heavens. Simple shelters rose beside rivers and open fields. Fires burned softly beneath the stars each night. The earth that once felt harsh and unfamiliar gradually became home. The days were no longer effortless as they had been within Eden. The land demanded patience now, labor, endurance. But with time, human hands learned how to survive within the changing world. Adam worked beneath the burning sun while wind moved across distant hills. Eve gathered food beside rivers that shimmered beneath the morning light. And together, the first man and woman continued walking through a world forever changed by sorrow and hope alike. Yet even outside paradise, beauty still remained everywhere around them. Golden sunlight still touched the tops of mountains each dawn. The stars still filled the heavens with endless oceans of light each night. Forests still breathed softly beneath the wind, and rivers still carried the quiet music of creation across the earth. Perhaps there were evenings when Adam and Eve sat beside the fire in silence, remembering the garden they once called home, the rivers of Eden, the warmth of its endless sunlight, the peaceful sound of waterfalls moving through untouched forests. Perhaps they spoke softly about the ancient trees beneath which humanity first awakened. Or perhaps some memories were too painful for words. Because paradise had not disappeared from their hearts. It remained there quietly, like distant music drifting through memory. Beautiful, sacred, forever out of reach. And yet, life continued growing around them. The world outside Eden slowly became filled with human voices for the very first time. Children would one day run beside rivers that had never known human footsteps before. Fires would glow across valleys once silent beneath the stars. The earth itself would slowly change beneath the hands of humanity. Adam, the first man, would become the beginning of every generation that followed. Every kingdom, every city, every wandering traveler beneath the heavens. All of humanity stretching forward through time, beginning quietly beside the rivers of Eden. And perhaps that is why the story of Adam still feels so ancient and familiar at the same time. Because somewhere deep within every human heart, there still lives a longing for peace, for home, for the lost beauty of a world untouched by suffering. Even now, thousands of years later, humanity still dreams of rivers untouched by fear, of gardens filled with peace, of a place where sorrow no longer exists beneath the stars. Perhaps part of us still remembers Eden. Tonight, as the world around you slowly grows quiet once again, imagine the first man standing beneath the heavens long ago, the wind moving softly across the earth, the stars drifting endlessly above him, the rivers carrying their quiet song through the darkness, and somewhere within that ancient silence, human history quietly beginning. Thank you for walking through this story tonight. And if these peaceful journeys through biblical history bring you comfort, you can gently subscribe and return again for the next story beneath the stars. Now, allow your thoughts to grow quiet. Allow the world around you to soften into silence. And let the ancient rivers of Eden slowly drift into your dreams tonight.